Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little different, a gentle journey through the most soothing, calming, and wonderfully peaceful facts about our planet Earth. These are not facts meant to shock or surprise, but to wrap around you like a warm blanket and ease you into the most restful sleep you've had in ages. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight together. Our planet holds a journey that feels almost magical, far beyond the dramatic volcanoes and roaring storms we usually hear about. Beneath the chaos and noise of daily life, Earth hums with a quiet rhythm that has been playing for billions of years. Right now, as you listen to this, Earth is breathing. Not metaphorically, but actually breathing. The entire planet expands and contracts twice a day, rising and falling by about 6 inches as the gravitational pull of the sun and moon gently massages our world. It's like the planet itself is taking slow, deep breaths, and we're all just along for this peaceful ride. You can't feel it, but it's happening right beneath you, this ancient rhythm that's been going on since long before humans ever walked the earth. And speaking of rhythms, did you know that trees talk to each other? Not with words, but through an underground network so vast and interconnected that scientists call it the Wood Wide Web. Beneath every forest, fungal threads connect tree roots in a gentle conversation that's been going on for millions of years. They share nutrients, send warnings about insects, and even care for their sick neighbours by sending them extra resources. It's like nature's own version of a caring community, where no tree stands truly alone. When you walk through a forest, you're walking above one of the most peaceful social networks on Earth. The ocean, too, has its own quiet wonders that most people never think about. Deep in the Pacific, there are underwater lakes. Yes, lakes beneath the ocean. These brine pools sit peacefully on the sea floor, their saltier, denser water creating distinct boundaries that look exactly like shorelines underwater. Fish swim above them as if they're flying over tiny alien worlds. These hidden lakes have been sitting there undisturbed for thousands of years, proof that even in most remote places on the deepest Earth, there's still mystery and tranquility waiting to be discovered. Here's something that might make you smile as you drift off tonight. Dolphins have names for each other. Each dolphin develops its own unique whistle signature as a baby, and other to recognize and call dolphins learn that specific sound when they want to get that dolphin's attention. It's like having a personal ringtone that only your friends know. And when dolphin mothers are pregnant, they sing their signature whistle to their unborn babies, teaching them their family song before they're even born. The ocean is filled with these gentle lullabies, mothers singing to their children in the peaceful depths. The Earth's magnetic field, that invisible shield protecting us from harmful space radiation, moves in the most graceful way. It doesn't just sit there static and rigid. Instead, it flows and shifts like a slow, cosmic dance. The magnetic North Pole wanders about 25 miles each year, following ley lines of magnetic energy that spiral around our planet like ribbons of protection. It's been doing this dance for billions of years, a slow waltz that keeps us safe while we sleep, completely unaware of the gentle choreography happening in the atmosphere above us. And here's something beautiful about rain that you've probably never considered. Every raindrop is unique, not just in where it falls, but in its journey to reach you. The water in a single drop might have been part of a cloud over the Amazon rainforest, then evaporated from the ocean near Japan, then fallen as snow on a mountain in Tibet, then flowed through underground streams for decades before finally evaporating again and becoming part of the cloud that brought it to your window tonight. Each drop is a tiny time traveler, carrying stories from around the world, connecting you to every place has ever been water. bamboo grows so painfully that you actually sit next to it and watch it grow. Some species grow up to 3 feet in a single day, but they do it so gently, so quietly, that you can see the progress hour by hour without any drama or noise. It's of the most uneditative things you can witness in nature, this steady, unstoppable growth that happens at just the right pace to be both miraculous and calming. In Japan, people have been known to meditate next to bamboo groves for this very reason, finding peace in watching life unfold at its own perfect rhythm. The sand on beaches tells stories of incredible patience. Each grain has been tumbled by waves for anywhere from hundreds to millions of years, slowly worn down from mountains and cliffs into perfect, smooth little spheres. When you walk on sand, you're walking on the results of the ocean's most gentle, persistent work. It's like nature's meditation practice, the same motion repeated billions of times until something beautiful emerges. And the sound sand makes when you walk on it, that soft crunching, is actually millions of these ancient stories whispering under your feet. Did you know that the Earth hums, not loudly, but constantly, at a frequency too low for human ears to detect? Scientists discovered this planetary song in the 1990s, a deep bass note that our world sings to itself, probably caused by ocean waves creating standing waves in the atmosphere. It's like the planet's own lullaby, a song that's been playing for millions of years, only recently discovered by humans who finally had sensitive enough instruments to hear Earth singing itself to sleep. Forests have their own weather systems, completely separate from the weather around them. They create their own rain, their own wind patterns, their own temperature zones. A large forest can actually call rain to itself, creating the moisture it needs to survive through the process of transpiration. Millions of leaves releasing water vapor into the air, creating clouds, creating the very rain that will feed them later. It's a perfect cycle of self-care that's been working for millions of years without any outside help. The way mountains are formed is surprisingly gentle when you think about it in geological time. Those dramatic peaks that seem so permanent and strong are actually the result of the most patient process imaginable. Tectonic plates moving just inches per year, slowly pushing land upward over millions of years. The Himalayas are still growing today, about 2 inches taller each year, but so gradually that in a human lifetime you'd never notice. It's like the Earth is doing the slowest, most peaceful stretching exercise imaginable. And here's something wonderful about snow that most people never realize. No 2 snowflakes are exactly alike, yes, but the reason is more beautiful than you might think. Each snowflake forms around a tiny piece of dust or pollen, and as it falls through different layers of atmosphere, it encounters slightly different temperatures, humidity levels, and air currents. So each snowflake is literally shaped by its unique journey through the sky. Every snowflake is a diary of its trip from cloud to ground, written in ice crystals and impossible to duplicate. The deep ocean has places called brine falls, underwater waterfalls where saltier water cascades down underwater cliffs in slow motion. These falls can be thousands of feet tall, flowing at the peaceful pace of thick honey, creating underwater rivers that flow along the sea floor for hundreds of miles. They're completely invisible from the surface, these majestic waterfalls in the deep, flowing quietly in the darkness where no human eyes normally see them. Coral reefs grow at the perfect pace for contemplation, about the same rate that your fingernails grow. You could theoretically sit next to a piece of coral and watch it grow over the course of months and years, seeing new branches slowly extend, new colors slowly develop. Some coral formations have been growing continuously for over 4,000 years, older than the pyramids, quietly building underwater cities grain by grain, polyp by polyp, with patience that makes human timescales seem frantic by comparison. The Northern Lights happen in complete silence. Despite being one of the most dramatic light shows on Earth, auroras make no sound whatsoever. They're caused by solar particles interacting with our atmosphere hundreds of miles above the ground, creating these dancing curtains of green and blue light that can cover half the sky. But if you're lucky enough to witness them in person, you'll be struck by how peaceful they are, how they move like slow dancers across the sky without a whisper of sound. There are underground rivers beneath many of the world's deserts, flowing quietly in darkness, sometimes for thousands of miles. The Sahara Desert sits above several of these hidden waterways, some of them larger than the rivers you see on the surface in wetter climates. They flow at their own pace, unaffected by droughts or seasons, carrying water that fell as rain thousands of years ago, slowly making their way toward distant oceans they may never reach. The way seeds know when to sprout is one of nature's most gentle timing mechanisms. Many seeds can lie dormant for years, decades, even centuries, waiting for exactly the right combination of moisture, temperature, and light before they begin to grow. They're not impatient. They don't struggle or force their way into existence. They simply wait in perfect stillness until conditions are ideal for their success. Some lotus seeds found in ancient lake beds have sprouted after lying dormant for over 1,000 years, proving that nature's timing is always perfect, even when it seems impossibly slow to us. Deep beneath the ocean floor, there are rivers of liquid carbon dioxide that flow like gentle streams through the sediment. These CO2 rivers are completely harmless to life above, moving at the pace of honey through underwater valleys and canyons. They've been flowing for millions of years, invisible and peaceful, creating their own quiet ecosystems where specialized bacteria thrive in the slow-moving currents. It's like discovering that the Earth has a completely separate circulatory system that we never knew existed, one that operates on its own timeline, independent of everything happening on the surface. The way glaciers move is surprisingly soothing when you understand the process. Despite their massive size, glaciers flow like extremely thick rivers, moving just a few inches per day in most places. They carve valleys and shape landscapes with the gentlest possible touch, taking thousands of years to accomplish what rushing water might do in decades. The ice doesn't fight against the land beneath it. Instead, it simply follows gravity's patient pull, sliding along on a thin layer of meltwater, reshaping continents one microscopic movement at a time. Here's something beautiful about how caves form that most people never consider. Limestone caves are created by water that's just slightly acidic from absorbing carbon dioxide from the air and soil. This water doesn't blast through rock or force its way violently underground. Instead, it seeps through tiny cracks over millions of years, dissolving the stone grain by grain with chemical reactions so gentle they're practically whispers. The result is these cathedral-like spaces beneath our feet, carved not by force, but by the most patient artistry imaginable. Trees sleep at night, just like we do. Scientists have discovered that many trees actually relax their branches and leaves when darkness falls, allowing them to droop by several inches in a process that looks remarkably like settling down for rest. Birch trees have been observed dropping their branches by nearly 4 inches during nighttime hours, then slowly lifting them again as dawn approaches. It's as if the entire forest is tucking itself in for the night, finding its own comfortable position for sleep. The Earth's rotation is gradually slowing down, but at such a peaceful pace that you'd never notice it in your lifetime. Each day is getting about 1.7 milliseconds longer every century due to the gravitational pull of the moon. This cosmic braking system has been operating for billions of years, gently stretching our days longer bit by bit. When dinosaurs roamed the Earth, a day was only about 23 hours long. The moon has been our patient timekeeper, slowly giving us more hours of sunlight and darkness, extending our days like a cosmic gift that keeps on giving. Lightning creates something unexpectedly peaceful called fulgurites. When lightning strikes sand, The intense heat instantly melts the grains and fuses them into hollow glass tubes that preserve the exact path the lightning took through the ground. These natural glass sculptures can be several feet long, branching like frozen tree roots beneath the surface. They're completely harmless once formed, and they can last for thousands of years, hidden in beaches and deserts as permanent records of single moments when the sky touched the earth. The way morning dew forms is like watching nature's most gentle magic trick happen in slow motion. As temperatures drop during the night, water vapor in the air slowly condenses on surfaces that have cooled below the dew point. Each tiny droplet forms without any drama or fanfare, simply appearing as the air can no longer hold all its moisture. By morning, millions of these perfect little spheres cover grass and leaves like nature's jewelry, each one a tiny lens that captures and reflects the early sunlight. Deep ocean currents move like rivers through the sea, but at the most relaxing pace imaginable. The global conveyor belt of ocean circulation takes about 1,000 years to complete one full cycle around the world. Water that sinks near Greenland today won't surface again until it reaches the Pacific Ocean sometime around the year 3024. These currents don't rush or hurry. They simply flow at their own ancient rhythm, carrying heat and nutrients around the planet in a circulation system that's been operating steadily for millions of years. The magnetic field around Earth creates something called the magnetosphere, an invisible bubble that extends tens of thousands of miles into space. This protective shield deflects most of the harmful particles streaming from the sun, but it does so with such gentle efficiency that we never feel or notice the cosmic battle happening above our heads. Solar wind particles slide along the magnetic field lines like water flowing around a smooth stone, redirected harmlessly away from our planet in a process that's been protecting life on Earth for billions of years. Stalactites and stalagmites grow so slowly that some formations in caves are still growing from water that began dripping when the last ice age ended. Each drop of mineral-rich water that falls from a cave ceiling leaves behind the tiniest deposit of calcite, building these stone icicles layer by microscopic layer. The process is so gradual that many formations grow less than an inch per century. Some of the stalactites hanging in caves today began forming when early humans first discovered fire, and they're still growing one patient drop at a time. The way plants track the sun across the sky is called heliotropism, and it happens so smoothly you can barely detect the movement even when you're watching carefully. Sunflowers are famous for this, but many plants slowly rotate their flowers or leaves throughout the day to follow the sun's path. They're not struggling or straining to keep up. Instead, they move with the same gentle persistence as the hands of a clock, always knowing exactly where their energy source is located without any apparent effort. Underground, there are vast networks of caves filled with perfectly still water that hasn't moved for thousands of years. These underground lakes exist in complete darkness and silence, maintaining constant temperatures year-round. The water is often so clear and still that cave divers describe it as flying through liquid air. These hidden reservoirs have been sitting peacefully beneath our feet since before recorded human history, holding water that fell as rain during the time of ancient civilizations. The way sand dunes migrate across deserts is like watching landscapes dance in extremely slow motion. Wind picks up individual grains from one side of a dune and deposits them on the other side, causing the entire dune to slowly walk across the desert floor. Some dunes travel several feet per year, following ancient pathways that have been used by migrating sand formations for thousands of years. They move with purpose but without haste, reshaping the desert one grain at a time. Pearls form through one of nature's most patient processes. When an oyster encounters an irritant like a grain of sand, it fully. Instead, it begins the slow process of coating it, doesn't try to expel it, force the irritant with layers of nacre, the same material that lines the inside of its shell. Year after year, the oyster adds new layers, gradually transforming the source of irritation into something beautiful and valuable. Some natural pearls take decades to reach full size, growing imperceptibly as the oyster continues its quiet work of creation. The Earth's crust floats on the mantle beneath it like puzzle pieces on a slowly moving sea of hot rock. These continental plates drift at about the same rate your fingernails grow, carrying entire continents on journeys that take millions of years to complete. The process is so gradual that mountains rise and fall, oceans open and close, and new land forms without any violence or sudden movements. It's geology operating at the most peaceful pace imaginable, reshaping our world through processes so slow they're essentially invisible to human perception. Many flowers open and close on their own daily schedules, independent of sunlight or weather conditions. Morning glories unfurl their petals just before dawn, while 4 o'clocks wait until late afternoon to reveal their colours. Each species has evolved its own internal clock that tells it the optimal time to display its flowers for pollinators. This daily rhythm has been refined over millions of years of evolution, creating a natural timetable that operates with clockwork precision but feels as natural as breathing. The way snow accumulates in high mountains creates layers that tell stories about weather patterns going back thousands of years. Each winter's snowfall becomes compressed into ice, creating annual rings in glaciers that scientists can read like tree over 800,000 years ago, preserved in frozen rings. Some ice cores contain atmospheric information from silence high above the world. These icy archives have been quietly collecting data about Earth's climate for millennia, waiting patiently for humans to develop the technology to read their ancient messages. Beneath many forests, there are caves where the temperature remains exactly the same year-round, usually matching the average annual temperature of the region above ground. These natural refrigerators maintain their steady coolness through a process called thermal inertia, where the massive amount of rock surrounding the cave acts like a battery for temperature, storing coolness in summer and warmth in winter. Animals have discovered these climate-controlled shelters and use them as perfect retreats from seasonal weather extremes. The way rivers meander across flat landscapes follows mathematical patterns that are surprisingly consistent around the world. Rivers don't fight against the land or try to force straight paths to the ocean. Instead, they follow the path of least resistance, creating graceful S-curves that become more pronounced over time. The ratio of a river's length to the straight-line distance between its source and mouth tends to hover around 3.14, the same as pi. It's as if rivers naturally understand geometry and prefer to flow in mathematically perfect curves rather than harsh, straight lines. Human beings aren't the only creatures who enjoy music. Many animals create and respond to rhythmic sounds in ways that suggest they find pleasure in musical patterns. Whales compose songs that can last for hours, with verses and choruses that change gradually over time as the songs spread through whale populations like slow-moving hit records. Some whale songs have been tracked as they migrate across entire ocean basins, evolving and changing as they pass from one whale community to another, creating a kind of musical evolution that happens over years rather than minutes. Human beings aren't the only creatures who enjoy music, sounds in ways that suggest they find pleasure. Many animals create and respond to rhythmic in musical patterns. Whales compose songs that can last for hours, with verses and choruses that change gradually over time as the songs spread through whale populations like slow-moving hit records. Some whale songs have been tracked as they migrate across entire ocean basins, evolving and changing as they pass from one whale community to another, creating a kind of musical evolution that happens over years rather than minutes. The deepest parts of the ocean are not empty voids, but peaceful communities of creatures that have adapted to life in perpetual darkness. These deep-sea animals don't struggle against their environment. Instead, they've evolved perfect solutions for thriving in conditions that would seem impossible to surface dwellers. Bioluminescent creatures create their own light shows thousands of feet below the surface, communicating through patterns of living light in a language that's been developing for millions of years in the quiet depths where no sunlight has ever reached. The process of how islands are born is one of nature's most gentle demonstrations of power. Deep beneath the ocean floor, volcanic activity doesn't explode violently into existence. Instead, lava slowly seeps through cracks in the seafloor, cooling instantly in the cold water and building layer upon layer of new rock. Over millions of years, these underwater mountains grow taller and taller until one day they finally break the surface and become islands. The Hawaiian Islands are still growing this way today, adding new land to our planet at the patient pace of a few inches per year, creating paradise one cooling lava drop at a time. The way clouds form follows patterns so predictable and peaceful that meteorologists can forecast their behavior days in advance. Water evaporates from oceans and lakes, rises invisibly through the atmosphere, and condenses around microscopic particles of dust or salt at exactly the right altitude where temperature and pressure create perfect conditions for cloud formation. These aerial rivers of moisture drift across continents following air currents that have been flowing in the same general patterns for thousands of years, bringing life-giving rain to regions that depend on this ancient delivery system. Tide pools exist in a state of perfect balance between the ocean and the land. Twice a day, these small rocky basins are completely submerged by incoming tides, then left exposed to air as the water retreats. The creatures living in these pools have evolved remarkable patience, spending half their lives underwater and half in open air, never struggling against this rhythm, but instead embracing it completely. Sea anemones close their tentacles and wait, hermit crabs find shelter in deeper crevices, and everything settles into a twice-daily meditation that's been going on for millions of years. The Earth's atmosphere has layers that each serve different peaceful purposes, like floors in a perfectly organized building. The troposphere where we live contains all our weather and extends just high enough to keep everything we need close to the surface. Above that, the stratosphere contains the ozone layer that quietly filters harmful radiation without us ever noticing its work. Higher still, the mesosphere burns up meteors before they can reach the ground, and the thermosphere absorbs the most energetic particles from space. Each layer does its job without interfering with the others, creating a multi-story system of protection that's been working flawlessly for billions of years. Trees communicate not just through underground networks, but also through the air itself. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases chemical signals that warn nearby trees to begin producing defensive compounds in their leaves. These airborne messages travel on the wind like invisible letters, carrying information about threats and seasonal changes throughout the forest. The trees don't panic or rush their responses. Instead, they calmly adjust their chemistry over the course of days or weeks, creating a forest-wide immune system that responds to challenges with collective wisdom rather than individual fear. The way fossils form is perhaps nature's most patient art project. When a plant or animal dies in just the right conditions, sediment slowly covers the remains grain by grain over thousands of years. Minerals in groundwater gradually replace the organic material, creating an exact stone replica of the original life form. This process happens so slowly that some fossils preserve details down to individual cells, creating perfect sculptures that can last hundreds of millions of years. The fossil record is essentially a library where each page took millennia to write and will last forever once completed. Glacial valleys have a distinctive U-shape that's different from valleys carved by rivers, and the reason reveals how gently glaciers do their work. Unlike rushing water that cuts a sharp V into the landscape, Glaciers move so slowly that they have time to grind and polish the entire valley floor as they pass. They don't hack or slash through the terrain. Instead, they embrace the land beneath them, carrying it along grain by grain, creating these smooth, broad valleys that look like they were sculpted by the world's largest, most patient artist working with tools made of ice and time. The Northern Lights have a southern counterpart called the Aurora Australis, and together they create a synchronized light show that happens simultaneously at both poles. When solar particles interact with Earth's magnetic field, they're guided toward both the north and south magnetic poles at the same time, creating mirror image displays of dancing lights. People in Antarctica and people in the Arctic Circle can witness the same solar storm, creating beautiful auroras thousands of miles apart, a reminder that our planet's magnetic field connects the most remote places on Earth in perfect symmetry. Deep in the ocean, there are underwater snowstorms that fall in complete silence. Marine snow consists of tiny particles of organic matter that drift down through the water column like flakes in a snow globe, taking weeks or months to reach the ocean floor. This constant, gentle precipitation feeds the creatures living in the deep sea, creating a food chain that depends entirely on this slow-motion snowfall of nutrients. The process has been going on continuously for millions of years, creating underwater blizzards that no human eyes have ever witnessed directly. The way crystals grow follows geometric patterns that seem almost too perfect to occur naturally. Whether it's salt crystals forming in evaporating tide pools or ice crystals creating frost on windows, each crystal follows mathematical rules that create identical angles and proportions every time. Crystals don't struggle to find their perfect shape. They simply follow the natural arrangement of their molecules, building themselves atom by atom into structures that would make any architect proud. Some crystals in caves have been growing continuously for thousands of years, adding new layers with the patience of nature's most dedicated sculptors. Mangrove forests grow with their roots in salt water, something that would kill most other plants. But mangroves have evolved a peaceful solution to this challenge. They filter salt out of the water they absorb and excrete it through special glands in their leaves. You can actually see salt crystals forming on mangrove leaves as the trees quietly desalinate seawater all day long. These coastal forests create nurseries for countless marine species, while slowly building new land by trapping sediment in their root systems, expanding coastlines grain by grain with the steady patience of natural engineers. The Earth's core generates a magnetic field through a process so elegant it seems almost magical. Liquid iron in the outer core flows in patterns driven by the planet's rotation, creating electrical currents that produce our protective magnetic shield. This geodynamo has been operating continuously for billions of years, creating the invisible force field that makes life on Earth possible. The liquid metal flows in slow convection currents, taking thousands of years to complete each cycle, generating the magnetic field that guides every compass needle and protects every living thing from harmful cosmic radiation. Stalactites grow from cave ceilings by following gravity in the most patient way possible. Each water drop that forms at the tip of a stalactite hangs there for several minutes, slowly depositing a microscopic amount of mineral before finally falling. The next drop forms in exactly the same spot, adds its own tiny contribution, and continues the process. Some stalactites have been growing from the same drip point for tens of thousands of years, extending downward at a rate so slow that entire civilizations could rise and fall while the formation grows just a few inches. The way morning glory flowers open follows a biological clock so precise it can be used to tell time. These flowers begin opening about an hour before sunrise, unfolding their petals in a spiral pattern that takes exactly 40 minutes to complete. They don't need an alarm clock or any external signal. Their internal timing mechanism has been refined over millions of years of evolution to synchronize perfectly with the daily rhythm of sunlight. By afternoon, the flowers close again with the same methodical precision, creating a daily cycle as reliable as clockwork, but infinitely more beautiful. Underground rivers carved through limestone create some of the most peaceful waterways on Earth. These subterranean streams flow in complete darkness and silence, carving smooth channels through rock over millions of years. The water doesn't rush or tumble over waterfalls. Instead, it flows at a steady, meditative pace through chambers and corridors that echo with the gentle sound of water moving over stone. Cave divers who explore these underwater passages describe an otherworldly sense of peace, floating through liquid tunnels where no surface light has ever penetrated. The way sand dollars grow their intricate patterns follows mathematical principles that create perfect five-pointed symmetry. Each sand dollar begins as a tiny lava that settles on the ocean floor and gradually builds its circular shell following genetic instructions that have remained unchanged for millions of years. The delicate flower pattern on their surface isn't decorative but functional, providing the perfect arrangement of pores and channels for the sand dollars' feeding and breathing systems. These living coins of the sea create their geometric perfection without any conscious effort, following biological blueprints that produce mathematical art. Beaver dams represent one of nature's most successful examples of environmental engineering, and beavers approach their construction projects with remarkable patience and planning. They don't just randomly pile sticks in streams. Instead, they carefully select materials, weave branches together with mathematical precision, and create structures that can last for decades with minimal maintenance. Some beaver dams are hundreds of years old, continuously maintained by generation after generation of beavers who inherit both the dam and the knowledge of how to care for it. These wetland ecosystems support hundreds of other species, all because beavers understand the value of slow, steady construction work. The northern and southern hemispheres experience opposite seasons, creating a global balance where spring is always happening somewhere on Earth. When winter settles over the northern continents, summer is beginning south of the equator. This planetary seesaw ensures that life always has somewhere to flourish, that migration routes always lead toward favorable conditions, and that the Earth maintains a constant average temperature despite the dramatic seasonal changes happening in individual regions. It's like the planet breathes in and out through its seasons, but never holds its breath completely. Deep ocean trenches contain some of the most peaceful environments on our planet. These underwater canyons extend miles below the surface, where pressure is hundreds of times greater than at sea level, and temperatures hover just above freezing year-round. Despite these extreme conditions, life thrives in these depths with remarkable tranquility. Giant tube worms cluster around thermal vents, swaying gently in currents like underwater wheat fields. Bioluminescent jellyfish drift through the darkness like living stars, and fish adapted to the deep move with slow, graceful movements that conserve energy in their food-scarce environment. The way snowflakes preserve atmospheric conditions as they form creates tiny frozen records of their journey through the sky. Each branch and crystal formation reflects the exact temperature, humidity, and air pressure the snowflake encountered as it fell. Scientists can examine individual snowflakes under microscopes and reconstruct the weather conditions that existed at different altitudes when the snowflake was forming. Every snowflake is essentially a frozen diary of its trip from cloud to ground, carrying information about atmospheric conditions that existed for just a few minutes in one specific column of air. Coral polyps, the tiny animals that build coral reefs, work in perfect cooperation with algae that live inside their tissues. The algae perform photosynthesis and share the energy they create with their coral hosts, while the coral provides protection and nutrients for the algae. This partnership has been so successful that it's continued unchanged for millions of years, creating the largest living structures on Earth through the collaborative efforts of creatures too small to see with the naked eye. The Great Barrier Reef exists because billions of these microscopic partnerships have been working together with perfect cooperation for thousands of years. Mountain ranges cast rain shadows that create some of the most stable climate zones on Earth. As air masses move over mountains, they're forced to rise and cool, dropping most of their moisture on the windward side as rain or snow. By the time the air reaches the other side of the mountains, it's dry and warm, creating desert conditions that can persist for hundreds of miles. These rain shadows are so reliable that entire ecosystems have evolved to depend on them, creating a natural climate control system that's been operating with clockwork precision for millions of years. The Earth's rotation creates something called the Coriolis effect, which gently influences the movement of air and water across our planet's surface. This invisible force causes moving fluids to curve slightly to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. It's why hurricanes spin counterclockwise north of the equator and clockwise south of it. The effect is so subtle that you can't feel it in your daily life, but it's strong enough to influence weather patterns, ocean currents, and even the direction that water drains from very large basins. It's like the Earth is conducting a slow, invisible orchestra of moving air and water. Some trees can live for thousands of years by growing extremely slowly and efficiently. Bristlecone pines in the mountains of California and Nevada add just a fraction of an inch to their diameter each year. But this patient growth strategy allows them to survive in harsh conditions where faster-growing trees would quickly exhaust the limited resources. The oldest known bristlecone pine has been growing continuously for over 4,800 years, making it one of the oldest living things on Earth. These ancient trees have weathered droughts, storms, and climate changes by never being in a hurry, never wasting energy, and never giving up. The way underground streams carve through bedrock happens with such gentle persistence that the process can barely be measured in human lifetimes. Water doesn't force its way through solid stone. Instead, it finds the tiniest cracks and patiently dissolves the minerals grain by grain, creating smooth channels that wind through the earth like liquid highways. Some underground rivers have been following the same path for millions of years, slowly widening their passages until they become cathedral-like chambers where the only sound is the whisper of water flowing over polished stone. Certain species of moss can survive being completely dried out for months or even years, then return to vibrant green life within minutes of receiving water. They don't fight against drought or struggle to stay alive during dry periods. Instead, they simply enter a state of suspended animation, waiting patiently for conditions to improve. When moisture finally returns, these resurrection plants unfurl their leaves and resume photosynthesis as if they had never stopped, demonstrating nature's most peaceful approach to surviving difficult times. The way tectonic plates move beneath the ocean floor creates new land so gradually that entire ecosystems have time to evolve and adapt as their foundation slowly changes. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge spreads apart at about the same rate your hair grows, creating new ocean floor that pushes Europe and North America slightly farther apart each year. This process has been adding new real estate to our planet for millions of years, building underwater mountain ranges that rival the Himalayas but remain completely hidden beneath miles of peaceful ocean water. Deep in tropical rainforests, there are trees that bloom only once every few years, timing their flowering to coincide with subtle changes in temperature and rainfall that most other plants never notice. These patient giants can wait 5, 7, or even 10 years between blooming cycles, using the intervening time to slowly build up the energy needed for their spectacular reserves but brief displays of flowers. When they finally bloom, they do so all at once across hundreds of miles of forest, creating synchronized celebrations of life that have been timed by climate patterns older than human civilization. The Earth's wobble as it spins creates gentle variations in climate that unfold over periods of thousands of years. This astronomical dance, caused by gravitational interactions with the Moon and other planets, shifts the timing of seasons and the intensity of ice ages in cycles so long that early humans never noticed them. The planet rocks back and forth like a slowly spinning top, creating climate rhythms that have been influencing the evolution of life for millions of years through changes so gradual they're practically imperceptible to individual generations. Underground, there are vast caverns filled with formations called flowstone, created by mineral-rich water spreading across cave floors like extremely slow waterfalls of stone. These frozen cascades took thousands of years to form, built layer by microscopic layer as calcite-laden water flowed over the same surfaces again and again. The result looks like draped fabric carved from marble, with folds and curves that capture the movement of ancient water flows in permanent stone sculptures that will last for millions of years. The way certain desert plants store water demonstrates nature's most patient approach to resource management. Barrel cacti can absorb and store hundreds of gallons of water during rare desert rainstorms, then ration that supply to themselves over months or years of drought. They don't panic during dry periods or try to grow quickly when water is abundant. Instead, they maintain the same steady pace of growth, whether conditions are favourable or harsh, proving that consistency often matters more than intensity. Jellyfish have been drifting through the oceans for over 500 million years, using the same basic body design, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most enduring ones. They don't fight against ocean currents or try to swim faster than the water around them. Instead, they pulse gently through the water, using minimal energy to stay afloat and letting the ocean carry them where it will. Their transparent bodies are perfectly designed for a life of peaceful drifting, requiring so little energy that some species can survive for months without eating. The magnetic patterns locked in ancient lava flows create a permanent record of how Earth's magnetic field has changed over millions of years. As molten rock cools, iron particles within it align themselves with the planet's magnetic field like tiny compass needles frozen in stone. These natural magnetic tape recordings show that our planet's magnetic poles have reversed many times throughout history, flipping north and south in a process that takes thousands of years to complete and happens so gradually that life continues undisturbed through each transition. Some mountain lakes are so isolated that they contain species of fish found nowhere else on Earth, evolved in perfect adaptation to their specific high-altitude environment. These alpine lakes freeze over completely in winter, creating a peaceful underwater world where fish swim slowly beneath thick ice, conserving energy until spring returns. The water in these lakes can be so clear that you can see straight to the bottom, even at depths of 50 feet, creating windows into underwater worlds that have remained essentially unchanged for thousands of years. The way morning mist rises from lakes and rivers follows temperature gradients so predictable that you can almost set your watch by the process. As the sun warms the water surface, tiny droplets of moisture lift into the cooler air above, creating those ethereal veils of fog that drift across the water like ghostly curtains. The mist doesn't rush or swirl dramatically. Instead, it rises gently and steadily, following invisible thermal currents that carry it just high enough to catch the early morning light before it dissolves back into clear air. Limestone caves often contain pools of water so still they act like perfect mirrors, reflecting cave formations with such clarity that it's impossible to tell where the rock ends and the water begins. These underground mirrors can remain undisturbed for years, creating optical illusions that make cave chambers appear twice as deep as they actually are. The water is often so clear and motionless that cave explorers have been known to accidentally step into pools they thought were simply reflections on solid cave floors. The way sand moves through desert ecosystems creates patterns that repeat across continents with mathematical precision. Wind carries grains of sand in predictable arcs, depositing them in formations that follow the same geometric principles whether they're in the Sahara, the Gobi, or the deserts of the American Southwest. These sand rivers flow across landscapes like extremely slow-motion water, carrying individual grains on journeys that can last for decades as they hopscotch from dune to dune across thousands of miles of desert. Certain species of bamboo have synchronized their flowering cycles across entire continents, blooming simultaneously every 65 or 120 years, regardless of local climate conditions or geographic location. Scientists still don't understand how bamboo plants separated by thousands of miles coordinate their flowering, but the phenomenon suggests that plants possess timing mechanisms more sophisticated than anything humans have invented. After flowering, the entire generation of bamboo dies, leaving behind seeds that won't flower again until the same mysterious internal clock completes another multi-decade cycle. The deepest parts of ice sheets contain air bubbles that preserve samples of ancient atmospheres, creating natural time capsules that stretch back hundreds of thousands of years. Each layer of ice captures a moment in Earth's atmospheric history, trapping tiny pockets of air that researchers can extract and analyze to understand what the planet's climate was like long before humans existed. These frozen archives accumulate so slowly that a single ice core can contain climate data spanning longer periods than all of recorded human history. Underground root systems extend much farther than most people realize, creating vast networks that can span entire forest ecosystems. The roots of a single large tree might stretch out in a circle with a radius longer than a football field, but they do this so gradually and gently that they never disturb the roots of neighboring trees. Instead, forest root systems interweave like an underground tapestry, sharing resources and information through connections so extensive that entire forests function more like single organisms than collections of individual plants. The way certain crystals form in caves creates natural chandeliers that take millennia to complete. Gypsum flowers formed by mineral-rich water slowly evaporating in cave chambers grow into delicate formations that look like frozen fireworks or crystalline bouquets. Each crystal formation follows precise geometric rules, building itself atom by atom into structures so intricate they seem designed by master craftsmen, yet they form entirely through natural processes operating at the speed of geological time. Ocean gyres, those massive circular currents that move water around entire ocean basins, operate like enormous slow-motion whirlpools that take years to complete a single rotation. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch exists because plastic debris gets caught in one of these gyres and slowly spirals inward toward the center. But the same current system has been circulating nutrients and marine life around the Pacific for millions of years. These oceanic merry-go-rounds move so gradually that marine animals use them like highways, riding the currents on migrations that can span entire lifetimes. The Northern Lights create sounds that can only be heard under perfect conditions on the quietest nights. These acoustic auroras produce crackling and hissing sounds that occur about 200 feet above the ground, much lower than the visual displays in the upper atmosphere. The sounds happen so rarely and require such specific atmospheric conditions that many people who live in aurora zones never hear them, making these celestial whispers some of the rarest natural sounds on Earth. Fossil lightning, preserved in ancient rock formations, shows that thunderstorms have been following the same patterns for millions of years. These fulgurites, created when lightning fused sand into glass tubes, can be found in rock layers that date back to prehistoric times, proving that the electrical activity in Earth's atmosphere has remained remarkably consistent throughout geological history. Each fossilized lightning bolt is like a snapshot of a storm that happened millions of years ago, frozen in stone and waiting to tell its story. The way certain flowers track the sun throughout the day happens through a process called heliotropism that operates like an extremely slow dance between plant and star. Young sunflower heads follow the sun from east to west each day, but they move so smoothly that you need time-lapse photography to see the motion clearly. As the flowers mature, they gradually stop tracking and face permanently eastward, positioning themselves to catch the first light of dawn for the rest of their lives. Deep ocean brine pools create underwater lakes with distinct shorelines where fish swim above the denser, saltier water as if flying over an alien landscape. These submerged lakes maintain their boundaries for decades, creating some of the strangest ecosystems on Earth, where creatures adapted to extreme salinity live in pools surrounded by normal seawater. The boundaries between the different water types are so sharp that submarines can actually float on the surface of these underwater lakes, creating the surreal image of vessels sailing on lakes beneath the ocean. Some trees communicate across vast distances through airborne chemical signals that can travel for miles on the wind. When acacia trees in Africa detect browsing by giraffes, they begin producing toxins in their leaves and simultaneously release warning pheromones that alert other acacias downwind to begin their own defensive preparations. This early warning system allows trees to coordinate their defenses across entire savannas, creating forest-wide responses to threats through a communication network that operates entirely through scent carried on gentle breezes. The way glacial ice forms creates layers so distinct that scientists can read them like pages in a book, with each year's snowfall creating its own chapter in a story written in frozen water. The ice preserves not just information about temperature and precipitation, but also volcanic ash from ancient eruptions, dust from distant continents, and even pollen from plants that lived thousands of years ago. Some ice cores contain climate records stretching back nearly 1 million years, creating libraries of environmental history written in a language of compressed snow and ancient air bubbles. Underwater avalanches called turbidity currents flow down continental slopes like rivers of sediment-laden water, but they move so much faster than any surface avalanche that they can travel hundreds of miles across the ocean floor in a matter of hours. These submarine landslides reshape the deep ocean landscape by carving channels and depositing sediments in patterns that remain visible for millions of years. Despite their incredible power, they happen in the complete silence of the deep ocean, creating some of the most dramatic but invisible geological events on our planet. The Earth's shadow during a lunar eclipse reveals the planet's gentle curvature as our world slowly passes between the sun and moon. The shadow doesn't appear suddenly or disappear abruptly. Instead, it creeps across the lunar surface over the course of hours, demonstrating the stately pace at which celestial bodies move through space. Ancient astronomers used these eclipses to calculate the size of the Earth, proving that our planet was round by observing the curved edge of its shadow projected onto the moon's surface. Cave formations called cave pearls form in pools of dripping water where calcite slowly accumulates around grains of sand or small pebbles, creating perfectly round spheres that look like they were crafted by master jewelers. These natural pearls can take hundreds of years to reach full size, growing layer by microscopic layer as mineral-rich water deposits calcite in concentric rings around their cores. Some caves contain thousands of these pearls in various stages of formation, creating underwater treasure chests that have been accumulating their riches for millennia. The way morning glory clouds form creates some of the most predictable atmospheric phenomena on Earth, appearing with such regularity that glider pilots travel from around the world to ride these rare wave clouds. These rolling cylinders of cloud can stretch for hundreds of miles and maintain their shape for hours as they move across the landscape like slow-motion tornadoes lying on their sides. They form under such specific atmospheric conditions that they occur regularly in only a few places on Earth, creating natural wonders that operate according to schedules more reliable than most human transportation systems. Desert pavements, those smooth surfaces of tightly packed stones found in many arid regions, form through a process so gradual that individual stones can remain in the same position for thousands of years. Wind gradually removes the fine sand and dust from between larger rocks, leaving behind a natural mosaic of stones that protect the soil beneath from further erosion. These desert floors create some of the most stable surfaces on Earth, changing so slowly that ancient animal tracks and archaeological artifacts can remain undisturbed for millennia. The way certain seabirds navigate across thousands of miles of featureless ocean demonstrates natural GPS systems more sophisticated than any human technology. Arctic terns migrate from Arctic to Antarctic and back again each year, following routes that take them over both poles in an annual journey that covers more than 40,000 miles. They navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, the position of stars, and even the polarization patterns of sunlight, creating mental maps of the entire planet that allow them to find their way back to the same nesting sites year after year with pinpoint accuracy. Beneath the surface of many deserts, there are rivers of sand that flow like liquid streams through underground channels carved by wind and time. These subterranean sand rivers move so slowly that a single grain might take decades to travel just a few miles, following paths that have been established over millions of years. The sand doesn't tumble or rush through these hidden corridors. Instead, it flows with the consistency of thick honey, creating underground dunes that shift and reshape themselves in complete darkness, never seen by human eyes but following the same patient patterns that guide all flowing things on Earth. The way certain species of lichen grow on rocks demonstrates nature's most relaxed approach to expansion. These composite organisms, part fungus and part algae, spread across stone surfaces at rates so slow they're measured in millimeters per decade. Some lichen colonies growing on ancient monuments have been expanding continuously since before the Roman Empire, creating living maps that chronicle centuries of weather patterns in their growth rings. They don't compete aggressively for space or resources. Instead, they simply exist, slowly claiming territory with the confidence that comes from having all the time in the world. High in the atmosphere, there are rivers of air called jet streams that carry weather patterns around the globe in meandering loops that can span entire continents. These aerial highways flow at altitudes where the air is so thin that breathing would be impossible, yet they move with such consistency that meteorologists can predict their paths days in advance. The jet streams don't fight against atmospheric pressure or struggle to maintain their course. They simply follow the temperature gradients between different air masses, creating high-altitude expressways that have been guiding weather systems around the planet for millions of years. In the deepest parts of ancient forests, there are trees that have never experienced direct sunlight, living their entire lives in the gentle green twilight filtered through countless layers of leaves above them. These understory giants have adapted to thrive in conditions that would seem impossibly dim to surface dwellers, developing leaves that are darker and more efficient at capturing the scattered photons that filter down from the canopy. They grow slowly and steadily, adding just a few inches of height each year, content to spend centuries gradually reaching toward distant patches of sky they may never actually touch. The Earth's magnetic field extends far into space, creating an invisible cocoon called the magnetosphere that deflects cosmic radiation with elegant efficiency. This protective bubble stretches for thousands of miles beyond our atmosphere, gently redirecting charged particles from the sun like water flowing around a stone. The magnetosphere doesn't create violent barriers or explosive reactions. Instead, it guides dangerous radiation along smooth paths that carry it harmlessly past our planet, creating auroras at the poles as a beautiful side effect of this cosmic traffic management system. Certain species of trees can sense the approach of winter months before any visible signs appear, gradually slowing their growth and beginning to withdraw nutrients from their leaves in preparation for dormancy. They don't wait for frost or shortened daylight hours to tell them when to prepare. Instead, they respond to subtle changes in temperature and humidity that occur so gradually that most other organisms never notice them. This advanced planning allows trees to enter winter fully prepared, having slowly redirected their resources to their roots and core where they'll remain safe until spring returns. The way morning dew evaporates creates invisible columns of rising moisture that can be detected by infrared cameras, revealing ghost-like pillars of water vapor ascending from every surface as the sun warms the earth. These columns rise so gently that they're imperceptible to human senses, but they carry with them the scents and chemical signatures of everything the dew touched during the night. By afternoon, this moisture will have rejoined the atmosphere, eventually becoming part of clouds that might travel thousands of miles before returning to Earth as rain in completely different ecosystems. Deep beneath the ocean floor, there are layers of sediment that preserve the chemical composition of ancient seawater, creating archives of ocean chemistry that stretch back hundreds of millions of years. Each layer tells the story of what the oceans were like when it was deposited, recording changes in temperature, salinity, and the abundance of different minerals with the precision of a master librarian. These sedimentary records accumulate grain by grain, year by year, creating geological documents that reveal how the oceans have changed over time, scales that make human history seem like a brief footnote. The northern lights appear to dance and flow across the sky, but they're actually caused by charged particles following the Earth's magnetic field lines with mathematical precision. Each stream of light marks the path where solar wind particles are being guided toward the magnetic poles, creating curtains of luminescence that flow like slow-motion waterfalls of coloured light. The particles don't create random displays or chaotic flashes. Instead, they follow magnetic highways that channel them into specific patterns that have remained consistent for millions of years, painting the same basic designs across Arctic skies throughout geological time. Certain flowers have evolved internal clocks so precise that they can predict sunrise to within minutes, beginning to open their petals while the sky is still completely dark. These botanical timepieces don't rely on light sensors or external cues. Instead, they've developed molecular mechanisms that track the passage of time with clockwork accuracy, allowing them to coordinate their blooming with the daily rhythms of their pollinators. Morning glories, 4 o'clocks, and evening primroses each follow their own schedules with such reliability that botanists have created flower clocks that can tell time based on which species are currently in bloom. The way underground streams carved through limestone create some of the most acoustically perfect spaces on Earth, with cave chambers that can amplify whispers into full-volume echoes that last for several seconds. These natural concert halls form through millions of years of patient water erosion, with each droplet contributing to the gradual sculpting of spaces with acoustic properties that would be impossible to design intentionally. The caves don't try to create perfect sound environments. They simply follow the path of least resistance as water dissolves stone, accidentally creating underground cathedrals where every sound becomes music. Tidal pools maintain their own miniature ecosystems that reset twice daily with the rhythm of the tides, creating natural experiments in adaptation that play out on accelerated timescales. The creatures living in these pools don't fight against the dramatic changes in their environment. Instead, they've evolved to thrive on the constant transition between underwater and terrestrial conditions. Sea anemones close their tentacles and wait. Barnacles seal their shells and conserve moisture, and small fish find refuge in the deepest crevices, all following choreographed responses to tidal rhythms that have been refined over millions of years. The way certain desert plants coordinate their blooming creates spectacular displays that can cover hundreds of square miles in synchronized color, all triggered by the same rainfall patterns. Desert wildflowers don't compete with each other for the best timing. Instead, they've evolved to bloom simultaneously, creating massive displays that attract pollinators from vast distances and ensure successful reproduction for entire plant communities. These super blooms happen so rarely that they become legendary events, with seeds lying dormant in the desert soil for years or even decades, waiting for exactly the right combination of temperature and moisture to trigger their collective awakening. Deep ocean currents transport nutrients around the planet in circulation patterns so vast and slow that water entering the current system near Greenland won't surface again until it reaches the Pacific Ocean hundreds of years later. These underwater rivers don't rush or hurry to complete their global journey. Instead, they flow at their own ancient pace, carrying dissolved minerals and microscopic organisms on voyages that span multiple human lifetimes. The deep water moves so slowly that marine biologists can track individual water masses as they travel from ocean to ocean, creating biological highways that connect ecosystems separated by thousands of miles. The Earth's rotation creates subtle bulges in the planet's shape that shift slowly as our world spins, causing the solid ground beneath our feet to rise and fall by several inches each day in response to gravitational forces. This daily breathing of the planet happens so gradually and gently that we never feel the motion, but sensitive instruments can detect the Earth's surface flexing like a slow-motion drumhead responding to cosmic rhythms. The planet doesn't fight against these gravitational influences. Instead, it flows with them, adjusting its shape in harmony with the gravitational dance of the sun, moon, and other celestial bodies. Certain species of moss can survive complete dehydration for months or years, entering a state of suspended animation where all biological processes essentially stop until water returns. They don't struggle or wither during these dry periods. Instead, they simply wait, their cellular machinery perfectly preserved in crystalline structures that can instantly resume normal function the moment moisture becomes available again. When water finally touches these resurrection plants, they transform from brittle brown fragments into vibrant green carpets within minutes, demonstrating nature's most patient approach to surviving impossible conditions. The way stalactites and stalagmites grow toward each other in caves creates some of nature's slowest construction projects, with formations that have been reaching toward each other for thousands of years without ever quite touching. Each drop of mineral-rich water that falls from a cave ceiling contributes microscopic amounts of calcite to both the hanging stalactite and the rising stalagmite below, gradually building these stone sculptures from both directions simultaneously. Some pairs of formations have been growing toward each other since ancient civilizations first discovered agriculture, creating anticipation that builds over geological timescales. Glacial ice moves like extremely viscous liquid, flowing downhill under its own weight in currents so slow they're imperceptible to human observation, but powerful enough to carve entire valleys over thousands of years. The ice doesn't crack or break as it moves. Instead, it deforms plastically, bending and stretching like frozen taffy as it follows the contours of the landscape beneath. Glaciers create their own weather systems, generating winds that flow down their surfaces like invisible rivers and creating microclimates that can be felt for miles beyond the ice itself. The magnetic patterns recorded in volcanic rocks create natural tape recordings of how Earth's magnetic field has changed over millions of years, with each lava flow preserving the direction and intensity of the magnetic field at the moment it cooled. These geological recordings show that our planet's magnetic poles have wandered slowly across the surface throughout history, sometimes reversing completely in transitions that take thousands of years to complete. The rocks don't consciously record this information. They simply freeze magnetic particles in place like tiny compass needles, creating permanent records of ancient magnetic conditions that geologists can read like pages in the Earth's autobiography. Underground aquifers store water that fell as rain thousands of years ago, creating hidden reservoirs that flow so slowly through rock formations that the water moves just inches per year on its journey toward distant springs or ocean outlets. These fossil water supplies represent precipitation from climates that no longer exist, preserved in underground chambers where it waits patiently for the geological processes that will eventually bring it back to the surface. Some aquifer water has been travelling through underground passages since before the last ice age, following paths through porous rock that guide it on journeys lasting longer than recorded human history. The way certain birds migrate across continents demonstrates navigation abilities that surpass any human technology, with some species following routes that pass through the same narrow mountain passes and over the same small islands year after year with precision measured in meters rather than miles. Arctic terns complete annual migrations that take them from Arctic to Antarctic and back, covering distances equivalent to travelling to the moon and back over the course of their lifetimes. They don't use GPS or magnetic compasses. Instead, they navigate using star patterns, polarized light, and magnetic fields, creating mental maps of the entire planet that allow them to find their way back to nesting sites they haven't seen for months. Limestone caves often contain formations called flowstone that preserve the exact movement patterns of ancient water flows in solid calcite, creating frozen waterfalls and rapids carved from stone. These mineral cascades took tens of thousands of years to form, built layer by microscopic layer as calcite-rich water flowed over the same surfaces repeatedly, gradually creating sculptures that capture fluid motion in permanent rock formations. The flowstone doesn't try to imitate water movement. It simply records the paths that water actually took, creating artistic interpretations of hydrodynamics written in crystal and preserved for millions of years. The deepest parts of the ocean contain water that hasn't seen sunlight for over 1,000 years, having sunk from the surface in polar regions and begun a slow-motion journey through ocean basins that will eventually carry it around the entire planet before it rises to the surface again. This ancient water moves through the deep ocean like an extremely slow river, carrying dissolved nutrients and microscopic organisms on voyages that span multiple human generations. The deep water doesn't rush to complete its circulation. Instead, it flows at its own unhurried pace, connecting ocean ecosystems across vast distances through currents that operate like underwater conveyor belts moving at geological speeds. Certain species of bamboo have evolved flowering cycles that span decades, with entire populations blooming simultaneously across continents regardless of local growing conditions, then dying and leaving their seeds to begin the cycle again. These synchronized blooming events happen so rarely that they become legendary, with bamboo forests that have been green and growing for 40 or 60 years suddenly bursting into flower all at once before withering away. The plants don't communicate their timing to each other through any known mechanism. Instead, they seem to follow internal clocks that count off the decades with precision that would be impossible to achieve through external coordination. The way morning mist forms over lakes and rivers follows temperature patterns so predictable that you can watch the process unfold like clockwork every clear dawn, with columns of vapor rising from the water surface in geometric patterns determined by subtle differences in water temperature and air pressure. The mist doesn't billow or swirl dramatically. Instead, it rises steadily and gracefully, following invisible thermal currents that carry it just high enough to catch the early morning light before it dissipates back into clear air. Each tendril of fog represents a perfectly balanced dance between evaporation and condensation, creating ephemeral sculptures that last just long enough to be beautiful. Deep underground, there are caverns so large they contain their own weather systems, with clouds forming near their ceilings and gentle breezes circulating through chambers that rival the size of sports stadiums. These subterranean atmospheres operate independently of surface weather, creating microclimates that remain stable year-round, regardless of seasonal changes happening above ground. The cave weather doesn't create storms or dramatic temperature swings. Instead, it maintains gentle circulation patterns that have been operating for thousands of years, creating underground environments so consistent that specialized ecosystems have evolved to depend on their reliability. The Earth's crust floats on the semi-molten mantle beneath it, like a collection of massive rafts drifting across an ocean of hot rock, carrying entire continents on journeys that unfold over millions of years at speeds slower than fingernail growth. These tectonic plates don't fight against each other or struggle to maintain their positions. Instead, they follow convection currents in the mantle, drifting apart at spreading centers and slowly colliding at subduction zones in a planetary scale recycling system that has been reshaping the surface of the Earth for billions of years. Mountain ranges rise and fall, oceans open and close, and new land forms through processes so gradual they're essentially invisible to human perception. Certain species of trees can live for thousands of years by growing so slowly that they add less than a millimeter of new wood each year, creating growth rings so thin they can barely be measured, but allowing the trees to survive in harsh environments where faster-growing species would quickly exhaust the limited resources available. These ancient trees don't compete aggressively for nutrients or try to grow quickly toward the sun. Instead, they invest their energy in developing extensive root systems and efficient metabolisms that allow them to thrive on minimal inputs, creating living monuments that have been quietly growing since before the rise of human civilization. The way underground rivers carve through bedrock creates some of the most peaceful waterways on Earth, flowing in complete darkness through smooth-walled channels that echo with the gentle sound of water moving over polished stone. These subterranean streams don't tumble over waterfalls or rush through rapids. Instead, they flow at steady, meditative speeds through passages that took millions of years to form, creating underwater highways that connect distant cave systems in networks that extend for hundreds of miles beneath the surface. Cave divers who explore these hidden rivers describe an otherworldly sense of peace, floating through liquid corridors where the only sound is the whisper of current flowing over stone formations sculpted by millions of years of patient water erosion. The northern and southern hemispheres of Earth experience opposite seasons in perfect synchronization, creating a global balance where spring is always beginning somewhere on the planet while autumn is starting elsewhere. This planetary seesaw ensures that life always has favorable conditions somewhere, that migration routes always lead towards suitable climates, and that the Earth maintains thermal equilibrium despite dramatic seasonal changes happening in individual regions. The seasonal transitions don't happen abruptly or chaotically. Instead, they unfold gradually over months, following astronomical cycles that have remained constant for billions of years, creating predictable rhythms that life has learned to depend on. Deep in the ocean, there are underwater lakes formed by differences in water density, where layers of extremely salty water create distinct boundaries that look exactly like shorelines beneath the sea. These brine pools maintain their separation from the surrounding ocean water for decades, creating some of the strangest ecosystems on Earth, where creatures adapted to extreme salinity live in pools surrounded by normal seawater. The boundaries between different water types are so sharp that submarines can actually float on the surface of these underwater lakes, and fish swim above the denser water as if flying over alien landscapes that exist in the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean floor. The way certain flowers close their petals at night follows internal rhythms so precise they can predict darkness hours before the sun actually sets. These botanical timepieces don't wait for shadows to grow long or temperatures to drop. Instead, they begin their gentle closing ceremony while the afternoon sun is still bright, folding their petals inward with the same methodical precision that guided their morning opening. Each petal moves independently but in perfect coordination with the others, creating spiraling patterns that protect the flower's reproductive organs through the cool night hours. By dawn, they'll reverse the process with equal grace, unfurling their colours to greet the new day with clockwork reliability. Beneath many deserts, ancient underground forests of petrified wood lie buried in sediments that have preserved them for millions of years. These stone trees didn't turn to rock through violent processes or catastrophic events. Instead, minerals slowly replaced their organic material grain by grain over countless centuries, creating perfect replicas in stone that preserve even the finest details of bark texture and growth rings. Some petrified forests contain logs over 200 feet long, lying exactly where they fell millions of years ago, now transformed into gemstone sculptures that will last far longer than any living tree ever could. The way glacier-fed lakes maintain their distinctive turquoise colour comes from rock flour, microscopic particles of stone ground so fine by moving ice that they remain suspended in the water like liquid gemstones. This glacial milk doesn't settle to the bottom or clear over time. Instead, it creates a permanent coloration that changes subtly with the light throughout the day, shifting from deep emerald in shadows to brilliant azure in direct sunlight. The particles are so fine they've been polished by ice for thousands of years, creating natural paint pigments that colour entire lakes with shades that seem too vivid to occur naturally. High in mountain ranges, there are lakes that freeze from the bottom up rather than from the surface down, creating inverted ice worlds where fish swim beneath clear water while solid ice forms on the lake floor below them. This reverse freezing happens when springs feed cold water into the depths while surface water remains slightly warmer, creating temperature inversions that flip the normal rules of ice formation. These upside-down winter worlds can exist for months, with ice formations growing upward from the bottom like crystal gardens while the surface remains liquid and navigable. Certain species of algae create bioluminescent displays that turn entire bays into liquid starfields, with millions of microscopic organisms producing cold light whenever the water is disturbed. These living galaxies don't glow constantly or randomly. Instead, they respond to movement with flashes of blue-green light that fade gradually back to darkness, creating temporary constellations that appear and disappear with each wave or swimming fish. The light serves as a defense mechanism, startling predators with sudden illumination, but the effect creates some of the most magical natural phenomena on Earth, transforming ordinary seawater into liquid lightning. The way morning frost forms follows geometric principles that create identical patterns on surfaces separated by thousands of miles, with ice crystals building themselves according to mathematical rules that produce the same basic designs, whether they're forming on car windshields in Canada or grass blades in Siberia. Each crystal doesn't consciously choose its shape or compete with neighbouring crystals for space. Instead, they all follow the same molecular blueprints, creating fractal patterns that repeat at every scale from microscopic dendrites to macro formations visible from space. The frost builds itself atom by atom into structures that would be impossible to design intentionally, yet appear with perfect consistency every time conditions are right. Deep beneath the African continent, there are underground rivers that have been flowing in complete darkness for millions of years, carrying water that originally fell as rain when the Sahara was still a lush grassland. These fossil rivers move so slowly through porous rock that the water takes thousands of years to travel distances that surface streams cover in days. They flow beneath some of the world's driest deserts, hidden reservoirs that maintain constant temperatures and chemical compositions regardless of the climate changes happening far above them. Some of these underground streams are larger than the Nile, carrying more water than any surface river in Africa, yet remaining completely invisible and unknown to most of the people living above them. The Earth's atmosphere creates optical illusions called green flashes that appear just as the sun disappears below the horizon, but only under perfect atmospheric conditions, when air layers bend light with precisely the right refractive indexes. This natural magic trick lasts for just 1 or 2 seconds, transforming the final sliver of sunlight into an emerald spark that seems to dance on the edge of the world before vanishing completely. The green flash doesn't happen randomly or frequently. It requires crystal clear air, stable atmospheric layers, and an observer positioned at exactly the right angle to witness this daily miracle that most people never see, despite happening somewhere on Earth every evening. Certain caves contain formations called cave flowers, delicate gypsum crystals that grow in perfect spirals and curves without any external force shaping their development. These underground blossoms form so slowly that individual crystals can take centuries to complete their geometric dance, following molecular instructions that create sculptures more intricate than anything human artists have ever carved from stone. The crystals don't struggle against gravity or fight for space with neighboring formations. Instead, they grow with infinite patience, building themselves into flower-like shapes that seem too delicate to exist in the harsh environment of deep caves, yet persist for thousands of years in their hidden gardens of living stone. The way certain trees shed their leaves follows chemical signals that begin weeks before any visible color changes appear, with the trees gradually withdrawing valuable nutrients from their foliage and transporting them to storage areas in their roots and trunk. This internal recycling system operates with such efficiency that trees recover nearly all the useful compounds from their leaves before allowing them to fall. The autumn colours we see are actually the result of this nutrient withdrawal process, revealing pigments that were always present but hidden beneath the green of active chlorophyll. Each leaf becomes a temporary artwork as its chemistry shifts, displaying colours that exist for just a few weeks before the leaf completes its journey from living tissue to forest floor fertilizer. Underground, vast networks of fungal threads connect forest ecosystems across continents, creating communication systems that operate faster than any internet connection humans have developed. These mycorrhizal networks don't just transfer nutrients between plants, they also carry chemical messages that can warn entire forests about insect attacks, drought conditions, or other environmental changes. The fungal highways operate continuously, maintaining connections that can span hundreds of miles and link trees of different species in cooperative relationships that have been evolving for millions of years. Individual trees tap into these networks through their root systems, joining biological internet communities that share resources and information with an efficiency that makes human social media seem primitive by comparison. The way tide pools refill follows hydraulic principles that create miniature tsunamis in reverse, with returning waves flowing into rocky basins through channels carved by thousands of years of tidal action. Each pool fills at its own rate depending on its size, depth, and connection to the ocean, creating a complex choreography of water levels that changes throughout each tidal cycle. The pools don't fight against the incoming water or resist the drainage of outgoing tides. Instead, they work with the ocean's rhythm, serving as temporary sanctuaries for marine life that needs protection from the full force of open ocean waves, while still maintaining connection to the larger ecosystem. Certain species of desert cacti can detect underground water sources from distances of over a mile, extending root systems that follow moisture gradients with the precision of divining rods. These botanical explorers don't send out roots randomly in all directions. Instead, they grow their underground networks strategically, following chemical traces and subtle soil moisture differences that lead them directly to hidden water sources. Some cacti develop root systems that are 20 times wider than the plant is tall, creating underground webs that can tap into water resources that surface measurements would never detect. The roots don't compete aggressively with neighboring plants. Instead, they often share access to water sources, creating underground cooperatives that help entire plant communities survive in seemingly impossible conditions. The northern lights create electromagnetic effects that can be detected by radio equipment thousands of miles away from where the visual displays are occurring, producing natural radio signals that sound like whistling, clicking, and musical tones when converted to audio frequencies. These aurora radio emissions don't follow the same patterns as the visible lights. Instead, they create their own acoustic landscapes that can be heard on shortwave radios during geomagnetic storms, adding a soundtrack to the celestial light shows that most people never realize exists. The radio auroras often continue for hours after the visible displays have faded, creating invisible concerts in the electromagnetic spectrum that play out across vast regions of the planet. Deep in tropical rainforests, there are trees that have never felt direct sunlight, but have developed leaves that can capture and concentrate the faintest scattered photons filtering down through multiple canopy layers. These shade specialists don't compete for light by growing taller or faster than their neighbors. Instead, they've evolved biochemical pathways that can perform photosynthesis with light levels so low that most plants would simply shut down their metabolic processes. Their leaves are often darker and thinner than surface plants, with cellular structures specifically designed to make the most of whatever light manages to reach them through the green twilight of the forest understory. The way certain mountain lakes stratify into distinct layers creates underwater landscapes where different temperatures, oxygen levels, and ecosystems exist just feet apart from each other. These thermal layers don't mix or blend gradually. Instead, they maintain sharp boundaries that can be felt by swimmers as they descend through distinct zones of increasingly cold water. Each layer supports its own unique community of organisms, creating vertical ecosystems where surface fish never interact with deep water species, despite sharing the same body of water. Some mountain lakes maintain these stratified layers year-round, creating aquatic high-rises where different forms of life occupy specific floors in underwater apartment buildings. Glacial valleys often contain moraines, ridges of rock and debris that mark exactly where ancient glaciers stopped their advance thousands of years ago. These geological signatures remain visible long after the ice has retreated, creating permanent boundaries that show how far the glaciers traveled during different ice ages. The moraines don't erode quickly or disappear over time. Instead, they persist as landscape features that can be read like frozen history books, telling the story of climate changes that happened long before humans developed written language. Some moraines contain rocks that were carried hundreds of miles from their original locations, creating geological puzzle pieces that help scientists reconstruct the movements of ice sheets that covered continents during prehistoric times. The way certain flowers time their blooming to coincide with specific astronomical events demonstrates plant awareness of cosmic cycles that extend far beyond daily or seasonal rhythms. Some desert wildflowers synchronize their flowering with lunar phases, while others respond to subtle changes in the Earth's magnetic field that occur during solar storms. These cosmic gardeners don't rely on local weather conditions or soil temperature to determine their blooming schedule. Instead, they've evolved internal mechanisms that can detect celestial influences so subtle that humans need sophisticated instruments to measure them, proving that plant life is connected to astronomical forces in ways that science is only beginning to understand. Underground rivers that flow through limestone caves create acoustic environments so perfect that single water drops can be heard echoing for several seconds through cathedral-sized chambers. These natural concert halls weren't designed for optimal acoustics, but millions of years of water erosion have accidentally created spaces with sound properties that would be impossible to achieve through intentional architecture. The caves amplify whispers into full-volume conversations and transform the gentle dripping of stalactites into percussion concerts that play continuously in the darkness. Some caves produce musical tones when air flows through their passages, creating wind instruments carved from solid rock that play themselves whenever atmospheric pressure changes. The Earth's magnetic field extends its protective influence far beyond our atmosphere, creating invisible boundaries in space where solar wind particles are deflected in patterns that can be mapped by satellites and visualized through computer models. This magnetosphere doesn't plan it. Instead, it forms to create a simple bubble around our complex, dynamic structure that stretches millions of miles into space on the side facing away from the sun while compressing into a more compact shield on the sunward side. The magnetic field lines flow and shift like invisible rivers, channeling dangerous cosmic radiation away from Earth's surface while creating the aurora displays at the poles as a beautiful side effect of this cosmic traffic management system. Certain species of moss growing on Antarctic rocks can survive being frozen solid for months at a time, then resume normal photosynthesis within minutes of thawing, demonstrating cellular preservation techniques that surpass anything human technology has achieved. These resurrection plants don't just endure extreme cold, they thrive in it, using specialized proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming inside their cells and metabolic processes that can essentially pause and restart without any damage to vital cellular machinery. Some Antarctic moss specimens have been found that were frozen and thawed repeatedly for over 1,000 years, yet remained capable of immediate recovery whenever conditions became favorable for growth. The way underground aquifers maintain constant temperatures creates natural refrigeration systems that some ancient civilizations used for food storage and climate control. These subterranean cooling systems operate independently of surface weather conditions, maintaining steady temperatures that reflect the average annual climate of their region over hundreds or thousands of years. The thermal stability of underground water systems is so reliable that modern geothermal engineers still use aquifer temperatures as baseline measurements for designing heating and cooling systems. Some aquifers maintain temperatures that haven't changed measurably since the last ice age, creating underground climate archives that preserve thermal records of ancient environmental conditions. Deep ocean trenches contain ecosystems that operate entirely without sunlight, powered instead by chemical energy from underwater volcanic vents that create oases of life in the deepest parts of the sea. These chemosynthetic communities don't depend on photosynthesis or any surface-derived nutrients. Instead, they've evolved to extract energy from sulfur compounds and other chemicals dissolved in the superheated water emerging from the Earth's interior. Giant tube worms, ghostly white crabs, and translucent fish thrive in these deep-sea gardens, creating complex food webs that demonstrate life's defined energy sources in the most unlikely places on our planet. The way certain birds navigate during migration involves detecting polarized light patterns in the sky that remain constant even when the sun is hidden behind clouds, creating celestial compasses that work in all weather conditions. These avian navigators don't rely on a single navigation method. Instead, they use multiple overlapping systems, including magnetic field detection, star pattern recognition, and atmospheric pressure sensing, to create redundant guidance systems more sophisticated than any human navigation technology. Some migrating birds can detect magnetic field variations so subtle that they can navigate using the Earth's magnetic signature like a fingerprint, finding their way back to specific nesting sites with accuracy measured in meters after journeys covering thousands of miles. Limestone formations in caves grow so slowly that some stalactites have been dripping in exactly the same spot for over 100,000 years, creating mineral deposits that preserve climate information from multiple ice ages in their crystalline layers. Each ring of calcite represents environmental conditions that existed when that layer formed, creating geological calendars that record temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition with precision that rivals modern scientific instruments. Scientists can read these stone archives like tree rings, extracting climate data that extends human understanding of environmental history far beyond the reach of written records or ice core samples. The way certain species of coral polyps coordinate their spawning creates underwater snowstorms that happen of tiny eggs and just once a year, with billions of sperm released simultaneously across entire reef systems in events timed to lunar cycles with precision that would make Swiss watchmakers envious. These mass spawning events don't happen randomly or gradually. Instead, they occur within the span of just a few nights, usually during specific moon phases, when tidal conditions are perfect for dispersing the next generation of coral across the widest possible area. The water becomes thick with reproductive cells that drift like living confetti through the moonlit ocean, creating underwater blizzards that feed countless marine organisms and ensure the continuation of reef ecosystems that have been following this ancient reproductive calendar for millions of years. Underground, there are vast chambers filled with formations called cave bacon, thin sheets of calcite that hang from cave ceilings in translucent ribbons that look exactly like strips of stone-carved meat. These mineral curtains form where water seeps through narrow cracks in cave roofs, depositing microscopic amounts of calcite along the edges of the openings over thousands of years. The formations don't grow thick or bulky like stalactites. Instead, they remain paper-thin while extending downward like geological fabric, creating underground draperies that flutter gently in cave breezes and glow with ethereal light when illuminated by explorers' lamps. Some cave bacon formations are large enough to walk behind, creating natural theatres where the stone curtains frame chambers that have remained hidden from sunlight since before humans discovered fire. The Earth's rotation creates something called the Chandler Wobble, a tiny deviation in our planet's spin axis that causes the North Pole to trace a circle about 20 feet in diameter every 433 days. This celestial dance happens so slowly and gently that it can only be detected by the most sensitive astronomical instruments, yet it represents our entire planet swaying slightly as it spins through space like a cosmic top that's just barely out of perfect balance. The wobble doesn't affect seasons or weather patterns. Instead, it operates on its own mysterious rhythm, possibly influenced by changes in ocean currents, atmospheric pressure, or the movement of groundwater deep beneath the continents. Scientists still don't fully understand what causes this planetary pirouette, making it one of the most elegant, unsolved mysteries in astronomy. Certain species of trees growing near active volcanoes have developed the ability to detect seismic activity days before eruptions occur, responding to underground vibrations too subtle for human senses by gradually closing their leaf pores and reducing their metabolic activity in preparation for the ash and toxic gases that will soon fill the air. These botanical early warning systems don't panic or make dramatic changes to their behavior. Instead, they quietly adjust their physiology with the same calm preparation that guides all their seasonal adaptations, treating volcanic eruptions as just another natural cycle to be endured with patience and foresight. Some volcanic forests show evidence of this pre-eruption preparation in their growth rings, with trees near active volcanoes developing thicker bark and more robust root systems that help them survive periodic burials under layers of ash and pumice. The way morning frost sublimates directly from solid ice to water vapor creates invisible columns of moisture that rise from every frosted surface as the sun's warmth touches the crystalline deposits. This transformation happens without the frost ever becoming liquid water, bypassing the melting stage entirely and ascending directly into the atmosphere as microscopic water molecules that carry with them the chemical signatures of everything the frost touched during the night. By midday, this sublimated moisture will have joined the atmospheric water cycle, eventually becoming part of clouds that might travel thousands of miles before returning to Earth as rain or snow in completely different ecosystems, creating an invisible connection between frost-covered meadows and distant tropical stow. RMS, or deep beneath the Sahara Desert, there are underground rivers larger than the Nile that have been flowing continuously since the region was covered by lush forests over 10,000 years ago. These fossil water systems move so slowly through porous sandstone that individual water molecules take centuries to travel from their sources in ancient mountain ranges to their eventual outlets in oases thousands of miles away. The water maintains the same chemical composition it had when it first soaked into the ground during the African humid period, creating liquid time capsules that preserve samples of precipitation from climates that no longer exist. Some of this ancient water is so pure that it requires no treatment for human consumption, having been filtered through rock formations for millennia till it achieves a clarity and mineral balance that surpasses anything modern purification technology can produce. The northern lights create electromagnetic disturbances that can affect radio communications across entire continents, but they do so with such gentle interference that the disruptions feel more like cosmic whispers than electronic storms. These aurora-induced radio effects don't blast signals with overwhelming power or create harsh static that drowns out communications. Instead, they add subtle layers of background sound that experienced radio operators recognize as the electromagnetic signatures of solar particles dancing through Earth's upper atmosphere. Some radio enthusiasts specifically listen for these aurora-enhanced signals, using the ionospheric reflections created by the northern lights to communicate with other operators thousands of miles away through a natural phenomenon that turns the entire atmosphere into a giant radio antenna. Certain flowers have evolved petals that change colour throughout their blooming cycle, shifting from white to pink to deep red over the course of several days in displays that signal their reproductive status to pollinators through a living traffic light system. These chromatic transitions don't happen randomly or quickly. Instead, they follow precise chemical schedules that ensure the flowers display the right colours at exactly the right times to maximise their chances of successful pollination. The colour changes are triggered by pH shifts within the petal cells, creating natural indicators that work like litmus paper to show the flower's internal chemistry. By the time the petals reach their deepest colours, the flower has usually been pollinated and is beginning the process of developing seeds, making the colour progression both the advertisement for pollinator services and a countdown timer for reproductive success. Underground cave systems often connect across vast distances through passages so narrow that water can flow between them, but larger organisms cannot, creating isolated pools that contain species found nowhere else on Earth. These biological islands develop their own unique ecosystems over thousands of years, with cave fish, salamanders, and crustaceans evolving in complete isolation from their surface relatives. The creatures living in these hidden pools don't compete with outside species or face predation from surface animals. Instead, they adapt to their specific cave environments with such precision that they become living fossils, preserving evolutionary traits that have disappeared from related species in other habitats. Some cave pools contain organisms that are more closely related to marine species than to their surface freshwater cousins, suggesting that these underground ecosystems preserve ancient evolutionary lineages that predate the formation of modern continental landscapes. The way sand dunes migrate across desert landscapes creates temporary oases that appear and disappear as the moving sand reveals and buries underground water sources. These ephemeral gardens don't last long enough for permanent ecosystems to establish themselves, but they provide crucial rest stops for migrating animals and brief opportunities for drought-resistant plants to complete their entire life cycles in the span of a single growing season. The oases move with the dunes, following the same wind patterns that guide the sand migration, creating a landscape of constantly shifting green patches that exist just long enough to support life before vanishing beneath the next wave of advancing sand. Desert nomads have followed these moving oases for thousands of years, reading the landscape like a slowly changing map where water sources appear and disappear according to patterns written in wind and sand. Glacial ice contains trapped air bubbles that preserve samples of ancient atmospheres, but these atmospheric time capsules also contain microscopic organisms that have remained viable for thousands of years in their frozen suspension. When scientists melt ice cores to extract climate data, they sometimes discover bacteria, pollen, and other biological materials that spring back to life after millennia of preservation in crystalline ice. These resurrected organisms don't struggle to adapt to modern conditions or show signs of cellular damage from their long frozen sleep. Instead, they resume their metabolic processes as if no time had passed, creating opportunities for researchers to study ancient ecosystems through living specimens rather than just fossil remains. Some bacteria recovered from glacial ice have been found to possess unique biochemical properties that evolved under environmental conditions that no longer exist on Earth's surface. The Earth's magnetic field reverses polarity periodically, with north and south magnetic poles switching places in transitions that unfold over thousands of years through processes so gradual that life continues undisturbed throughout each reversal. These magnetic flip-flops don't happen according to any predictable schedule. Instead, they occur when the geodynamo processes in Earth's core reach critical tipping points that cause the entire magnetic field to reorganize itself into a new configuration. During the transition periods, Earth's magnetic field doesn't disappear completely. Instead, it becomes more complex and chaotic, sometimes developing multiple north and south poles simultaneously before settling into its new reversed orientation. The magnetic reversals leave permanent signatures in volcanic rocks and seafloor formations, creating geological records that show our planet's magnetic field has been flip-flopping for billions of years without causing any mass extinctions or environmental catastrophes. Certain species of deep-sea creatures create their own light through bioluminescence, but they don't just produce random flashes or constant glows. Instead, they've evolved sophisticated light-based communication systems that operate like underwater Morse code, with specific patterns of flashes that convey information about species, sex, reproductive status, and territorial boundaries. These living light shows happen in the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean, where creatures that have never seen sunlight use their own biochemical illumination to find mates, avoid predators, and navigate through three-dimensional territories that extend from the seafloor to depths of several thousand feet. Some deep-sea organisms can produce multiple colors of bioluminescent light, creating underwater firework displays that rival any surface light show in their complexity and beauty. The way rivers carve their channels follows mathematical principles that create consistent patterns across all scales, from tiny streams cutting through backyard gardens to mighty rivers reshaping entire continents. These waterways don't force straight paths to their destinations or fight against the landscape they encounter. Instead, they follow curves and meanders that optimize their energy expenditure, creating graceful S-shaped patterns that minimize the work required to transport water and sediment from mountains to oceans. The ratio of a river's actual length to the straight-line distance between its source and mouth tends to approximate pi, suggesting that flowing water naturally understands geometry and prefers to follow mathematically elegant paths rather than harsh, direct routes. Even when rivers are artificially straightened by human engineering, they gradually return to their preferred meandering patterns, demonstrating that the mathematical principles governing fluid flow are stronger than temporary human modifications. Underground, there are vast networks of natural tunnels carved by underground rivers that create subway systems for groundwater, allowing aquifers to exchange water across hundreds of miles through connections that operate independently of surface topography. These hydrogeological highways don't follow the same routes as surface watersheds. Instead, they connect distant regions through deep rock formations, creating underground drainage systems that can transport water from mountain ranges to coastal plains through pathways that bypass all the obstacles that limit surface water flow. Some underground river systems are so extensive that water entering the network in one mountain range doesn't emerge at the surface until it reaches springs in completely different geographic regions, creating hydrological connections that link ecosystems separated by vast distances of apparently unrelated terrain. The way certain plants respond to music and sound vibrations suggests that they possess sensory abilities far more sophisticated than most people realize, with root systems that can detect and respond to acoustic frequencies in ways that affect their growth patterns, flowering cycles, and even their ability to resist disease and pest damage. These musical plants don't just respond to random noise or vibration. Instead, they show preferences for specific frequencies and rhythms, growing more vigorously when exposed to classical music and showing stress responses when subjected to harsh or chaotic sounds. Some farmers have begun playing music in their fields and greenhouses, reporting improved crop yields and healthier plants in areas where acoustic treatments are applied regularly. The mechanism behind these responses remains mysterious, but research suggests that plant cells may be sensitive to vibrations that travel through soil and air in ways that complement their known sensitivity to light, moisture, and chemical signals. So as we reach the end of our gentle journey through Earth's most soothing secrets, perhaps you're feeling what I hope you'd feel. That quiet sense of wonder mixed with deep, settling calm. We've wandered together through underground rivers that flow in darkness, watched bamboo grow in real time, and discovered that our planet breathes twice a day, just like we do. We've learned that trees sleep and dolphins sing lullabies to their unborn children, that every raindrop carries stories from around the world, and that beneath our feet, ancient water moves through stone corridors at the pace of meditation itself. These aren't just facts about Earth. They're reminders that we live on a world designed for peace, patience, and the kind of deep, lasting harmony that helps us sleep. Sweet dreams, everyone.